Alberta School broadcasts on the air.
Frontier to Farmland. As part of our Landmarks of History series, we are presenting 5 programs under the heading Frontier to Farmland, in which we discuss progress in Western Canada since the turn of the century.
This is the story of Tom, Dick, and Harry, or John Doe. He might be Chinese, Mexican, Norwegian, or American, Australian, or Canadian. The setting for the story doesn't matter. It could happen almost anywhere on Earth. This time, it happens in Alberta.
I am a farmer. I bought my farm in 1910. I was a young man then. I stood on the hill and looked out across the prairie, and I was proud. This is my land, I said.
It is a quiet land. The gullies are fringed with wild cherry and Saskatoon bushes, rustling poplars and the small gnarled pine. The prairie grass stretches out and on as far as you can see.
In spring the crocus and the buttercup lift their heads to the sun, and in the fall white daisies, goldenrod, and the ragged fireweed grow tall and blossom.
This is my land. It's good land, I said. And I broke the sod. I plowed, disked, and harrowed, and planted the land to wheat. I grew wheat.
Wheat for the granaries of the world, bread for the people of the world. Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, America, bread for the hungry world.
There were good years. I had 1,000 acres of wheat one harvest like a golden sea. My binders swathed it down. The men piled it in racks, hauled it to the threshing machine, and pitched the bundles into the great moor of the separator.
Harvest is an exciting time. The men's arms were brown and strong and glistened with sweat. They laughed and challenged one another as they pitched sheaves into the machine.
And the straw pile grew fat, and the wheat was a golden stream running into the wheat tanks.
There were good years. The thresher droned, and day and night we hauled wheat into the elevators.
1,000 acres of wheat growing in one piece.
10,000 years. 10,000 years of dying and renewing and dying went to make the black topsoil that grew the wheat.
It was good land. I bought a tractor, broke more land, and sowed it to wheat. Another tractor. I was the biggest farmer in the country.
There goes the Wheat King, biggest in the country. There goes the Wheat King, sending out wheat across the 7 seas.
He got 40 bushels to the acre, 1,000 acres of wheat at 40 bushels. Food for a hungry world, the Wheat King.
Wheat King, Wheat King, Wheat,
Wheat King, Wheat King, Wheat King, Wheat King.
And then came the dry years, the years of the great famine. There was no rain.
No rain.
No rain.
Will it rain soon?
The ponds dried up.
The wheat's dried out.
My crop's gone, finished, dried up.
We need rain, rain. Will it rain?
And the winds came. The wind was our enemy. I couldn't fight the wind.
The wind blew over the fields, lifted the dust, and carried it away.
The dust seeped through the windows, under the door.
The dust was in our nostrils and our mouths.
My land began to drift. The soil I'd worked so hard was blowing away.
The soil drifted.
It covered the fences, covered up our dreams.
Next year, we said. But the next year was the same.
The soil drifted into the gullies because the protecting grass had been plowed and disked and harrowed and cut away.
The soil drifted and sifted. The rich topsoil was carried away by the wind, and the spring thaws took it down to the rivers, down the long slopes to the sea.
I can't fight the wind, I thought. I can't fight the wind.
And the granaries stood empty in the fields, and the elevators in the towns were empty, and across the world people were hungry, needing bread.
This is my land, I thought, but we can't stay here and starve. We'll have to go, but I can't leave my land.
Some left it. Some packed up their stoves and bedding, their worn clothes, a few pots and pans, the household cat, the chickens, and drifted away from the farms they'd worked.
Where are we going? What will we do now? Why are we leaving home?
But the house was a home no longer. It leaned with the wind, and the door creaked on its hinges, gaped wide, and the windows stared out with blank, lifeless eyes. The house was a shell, a sometime desolate thing.
I watched the others go, and I watched the soil drifting, blowing away. The earth I'd plowed and harrowed and sowed to grain.
10,000 years and more of prairie grass dying and renewing itself and dying had gone to make the black soil that blew away.
It was good land. It's mine. I can't leave it. We'll have to go. We'll have to pack up and go. It wasn't my fault. I couldn't fight the wind.
You plowed into the coulees, left nothing to hold the soil, nothing to hold the moisture.
You cut down all the trees, left nothing to hold the rainfall, no place to shelter the birds that kill insects that eat your crop.
You grew wheat only and cut it close.
You stripped the soil of life-giving nitrogen and phosphorus. So many things you took away.
And you planted no crops to replenish the barren soil.
You thought only of this year's harvest, not of the years and years, the generations to come after.
You never replenished the soil. You wore it out.
Let it wash away down the gullies.
Let it blow away, pile up over the fences.
You wasted the soil.
You took the good earth and left a worn-out husk to give your children.
Thousands of years to make the rich soil that grew your wheat.
And you wasted it. Wasted it in 20 years.
Wasted it in 20 years. Why?
Why? Why?
I didn't know.
You didn't care.
I cared. I loved the land. I didn't know, I tell you. I didn't know, I tell you. I couldn't fight the wind.
There are ways. You could have found them.
What ways? I can't keep up with every new idea. What ways?
You could have looked for help.
What shall I do? Tell me. I don't want to leave my land. What shall I do? What can a man do? Alone?
But you aren't alone.
All over the world there are people ready to help you.
Studying, planning, finding out ways to conserve the soil, enrich it and make it more productive. You aren't alone.
And I looked for help. I talked to people. I sent away for books. I read bulletins and studied and thought. And I found out ways to fight the wind.
You can sow grass or clover along the coulees.
You must rotate your crops.
You can sow grain around the hill. We call it contour farming.
You must grow crops besides wheat, forage crops, alfalfa, clover, grass, to replenish the worn-out soil.
You can sow part of the land to hay 3 years out of every 8.
You can plant trees along the roadsides, between the fields. They'll hold the rainfall, break the wind.
And the birds will come back again. The robins and the yellow warblers will build nests in the spring. And you must remember forever that the earth feeds all living things. Without it, we will die.
And so I began, slowly, carefully, to reclaim my land. It took a long time, nearly 20 years. There is still much to do. But it's good land again. It gives a good life to me and my family. I'm not young now, but when I climb the hill and look across the fields, alfalfa, clover, grass, summer fallow, wheat, sometimes a blue field of flax, a strip of field peas. And when I look at my land, I'm proud of it. This is my land. I couldn't leave it.
It's a good land, quiet. In the gullies are the wild cherry and Saskatoon, the poplars and gnarled pine. The fields stretch out, some fallow, some in blossom, some green with the tender wheat.
And in the spring the crocus and the buttercup lift their heads to the sun. And in the fall white daisies, goldenrod, and ragged fireweed grow tall and blossom.
Well, boys and girls, there are some of the facts. You've seen soil drifting before the wind or running off with the spring rains. You've seen good farms turn unproductive and barren. You've seen land reclaimed under irrigation and soil conservation programs.
Did you know Alberta has one of the most extensive soil conservation programs in the world? Did you know that everywhere people are thinking about this problem?
We have asked several men who have farmed or studied agricultural problems all their lives to send a message to you who are listening today. Here are their replies.
From Henry Young, President of the Farmers' Union of Alberta.
In Western Canada, we are threatened by both wind and water erosion. The best preventative is to maintain the texture of the soil so that it will not wash or blow away.
And Dr. J.D. Newton, head of the Department of Soils at the University of Alberta, has written this message to you.
The climate of Alberta is, broadly speaking, semi-arid. We know that a number of great civilizations, which had been developed under systems of semi-arid agriculture, have failed to survive. Their decline can be traced directly to ignorance and neglect of the principles and practices of soil conservation.
And from L.E. Farris, a director of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture.
It is not too much to say that the future of our civilization rests directly on the top 6 inches of our soil.
And here's a note from Dr. A.G. McCalla, Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture at the University of Alberta.
It is the duty of every one of us to make sure that it will never be said of us that somewhere, sometime, someone starves because we have been careless with our soil.
And our last message comes from D.S. Longman, Deputy Minister of Agriculture of the Government of Alberta.
Alberta is a new land rich in soil and forests and minerals. The wise and intelligent use and preservation of this great heritage is the patriotic and sacred duty of every citizen.
Well, there you are, boys and girls. It's your problem more than anyone else's, because tomorrow the earth is yours.
This has been a broadcast on the important subject of soil conservation. It was written by Gwen Ferris Ringwood and produced at CKUA. Next week, Landmarks of History will be heard again with the last in the series Frontier to Farmland. Listen then for Ruts to Roadways. This has been an Alberta School broadcast.